welcome. My name's Steve Dickens, and you're joining us here on what is now episode 41 of Infrastructure Matters. I'm joined as always by Krista Macomber and Camberley Bates. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And we missed you last week.
We did.
We did.
I was in the UK and not really podcast ready, so just like you guys probably did a better job without me.
We told everybody. We told you you were over there with family, but also doing work. So there you go.
Yeah, they had me doing some work. I did got time to spend with Rocket on their announcement around their closing of the AMC acquisition from what is now OpenText. So yeah, you'll see that videos come out on our channel, so check those out. So I think we've had a quiet week. I think we've all just been at home. We've not been on the road. I'm joking, obviously.
I don't know about you, but I got 9 solid hours of sleep every single night. I know you did, Krista, right? You were just cruising through the week, right? So,
Krista, you've had the busiest week of all of us. I looked at, we were pinging on, what did you do, 25 vendor meetings this week?
I think it was 25 meetings over the span of 72 hours that I was in San Francisco at RSA. So I have a new goal to beat for next year.
That's got to win an award or something. There's got to be like a plaque or something.
Ever? Did you get any food? You know,
I know
people are bored listening to us, so we probably should get to the meat of this stuff,
right?
So I mean, that's a great segue. You've had a crazy busy week, largest security show of the year. Let's give you the floor. Tell us what you saw. Tell us what was going on.
Yeah. So it was, so as I mentioned, so I was there for 3 days, and I think I met with about 25 companies. So we kicked it off. Every year, Microsoft has their pre-day on Sunday afternoon. So we had the opportunity to attend that. Will Townsend on the more insight side, and myself, and then we filmed a couple of other kind of great videos with them first thing Monday morning, and then from there it was sort of off to the races. So a great mix of kind of analyst meetings with both companies that we've worked with for quite some time, some kind of companies that are newer to us. And we filmed some other videos. We got to spend some time with the TechStrong team, who are now part of the Futurum group family. So it was myself, Shira Rubinoff, Will Townsend, and the entire TechStrong team. We were all there kind of, trying to spread the wealth and really cover as much ground as we could.
So last week I asked you the question about what were going to be the big themes here.
Yes.
And we said AI. So what were the big themes coming out of RSA?
Yeah.
Did anybody talk about AI? I'm just be shocked if they did, right?
Nah, it didn't even come up. No. I'm joking. So, I know for Stephen, who I know you were on the road last week, and for anyone who wasn't able to listen, so kind of that was obviously, one of my predictions. And I would say it did hold true. So kind of what I was discussing last week was, in a number of kind of the pre-conference calls that I was having, my, my sense was that obviously it's a buzzword, but we're really getting down to kind of some more concrete technologies, services, best practices for being able to protect our artificial intelligence applications. So from my side, coming from, kind of a historical focus for me personally on data security and data protection, I'd already been getting a lot of questions around sort of protecting, the data itself that's being used, primarily that's being used to train artificial intelligence applications. But also we're even getting other tools. So we're even hearing AI security posture management, which is going to be another theme that I'm going to talk about as kind of our security posture management. So, I bring this up to kind of articulate that we're getting some technology capabilities, some services, and starting to maybe get even some kind of frameworks to be able to protect kind of the life cycle of our artificial intelligence applications. So I have to give a call out to probably my most interesting meeting of the week, which was with CalypsoAI in Waymo, artificial intelligent, autonomous, I should say, autonomous driving cars. So we kind of were able to take a scoot over to, the Fisherman's Wharf area and then back to the Moscone Center. So it was, literally quite a trip, especially watching the Waymo kind of navigate how to pull over and let me out in front of Moscone South when there's people in cars and everything like that. But anyway, it was kind of a good, parallel to, we're starting to be able to trust artificial intelligence a little bit more, or at least we need to make sure that as we're beginning to adopt AI, that we do so in a way that we can really trust it. So for Calypso, what they do is they actually look at the large language models themselves that are feeding AI applications, and they do things like identify vulnerabilities, for example, and kind of try to identify risks both internally and externally. They do a lot more, but again, that was just kind of one example. And if I were to try to summarize all of the variety of conversations I had around AI, that would be sort of the way I would summarize it in terms of where we're at from a security standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any of the big takeaways? Obviously, AI.
Yeah. Yep.
Been a bit of
Yep.
consolidation, M&A activity. Was there
Yep.
any kind of other sort of big trends that we should be thinking about?
Yeah. So for sure, I would say, the other couple of technology trends. So I kind of just threw a little bit of a reference to this concept of, threat posture management. So whether that be, we've talked on this podcast about data security posture management, but also we have, really kind of the ability to, as I was referencing, kind of Calypso does this a bit from an AI large language model perspective. I got to meet with Sneak, and what they do is they try to look at the kind of the code itself that developers are using to create, obviously not just AI applications, but any application, and to try to look at kind of the integrity and kind of the security posture of that code. So this is something that it's in my mind becoming a little bit of a buzzword, but at the same time, I would say it's certainly for good reason, because we're trying to become more proactive against the attackers and the malicious actors and really kind of become more preventative as much as we can. We're never going to be fully one step ahead of them, but the more that we can have visibility across our infrastructure, our data, our software code, and kind of really understand where those vulnerabilities are and how they're evolving over time. And then also, I'll make this comment, which is going to lead me into another topic that I wanted to touch on, but ideally gaining some insight that's actionable for, the security team, the IT team, things of that nature. Really try to kind of sift through the noise as well, and underscore where are the priorities in terms of these vulnerabilities to address, and what can we do to address them as well. Um, and that, that kind of leads me into another topic, which is just the, kind of the burnout of, security and in IT teams. They're trying to scale so much across these, whether it be kind of the infrastructure environment on the IT side, but for security teams, they're trying to keep pace with, how all of these threat vectors are evolving. So one of the videos that I filmed was with Elastic, and what they're doing is essentially they're trying to use artificial intelligence, but to provide analytics around kind of security threats and vulnerabilities, and almost offer an alternative to kind of your traditional SIM type tool and offering for the Security Operations Center. So that was a great video. It should be live by the time this webinar is live, so we'll make sure to link to that. But that was kind of another theme, which was, how do we really help to overcome, some of this burnout, help these security teams in particular to scale better, and kind of use not only AI, but automation and different technologies to be able to do so. Now, of course, it's, especially when we start to think about using AI for defense and security, it's a little bit of kind of crawl, walk, run. We have to learn to trust it, right? So typically it's not necessarily, in my opinion, completely going to take over the security operations center, anytime soon. But it's, the more we can kind of, again, find different ways in our daily processes to integrate it, learn to trust it, and then from there kind of broaden our use. My sense is sort of that's where we're at. But that was kind of another big theme, at least in my conversations from the week.
Oh, fantastic. I think we could spend the next 2 hours on those 25 meetings, but Camberley and I had a busy week as well. So, I mean, I'm assuming there's a bunch of research notes coming from you.
Yes. Yep.
Cover all of this, a bunch of videos. So we'll link to those in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So before I got to spend some time with you this week at Red Hat, you had a busy Monday before you joined us, Camberley.
Yeah.
You were at Solidigm. Not a vendor I know particularly well. I know you know them really well. Do you want to just maybe position them and then talk about what because you came, I met you, was it Tuesday morning? You were buzzing about your time at Solidigm. So
it was a great time with the entire executive team that's there and then some. I mean, they showed up, all of them showed up. I think the only person that wasn't there was the CFO, but I mean, the entire crew
back in the room counting the dollars.
I don't know, but Daniel was there as well as Patrick Moorhead. We were doing some work with them, but we also took advantage of this full day of doing analyst briefings and then doing a lab tour, of which I had the horrible mistake of wearing high heels that day, and it's a really big lab. So I thought it was safe, but I wasn't. I should have worn sneakers.
By the way, Camberley, sneakers all week for me.
Anyway, but it was
very wise.
I'll do a couple of call outs of some of the names. I mean, just to give you an idea, Dave Dixon, the CEO, the Greg Mattson, who runs strategic planning and all the marketing. Robbie Fricky he's a fellow with them. They had there, as well as a bunch of the marketing team was there. So, and then Dale Murdy Shaw, I think, is the guy that runs the lab, that took us through the lab. And it was a great, great trip. So a couple things. If you don't know who Solidigm is, they are the company that came out of Intel. That was when Intel moved out all their solid state drives. And there's all kinds of people there. There's other people that are doing solid state drives, but the one thing that's unique about Solidigm is they're focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is enterprise solid state drives. And so they're very tied into not only the big hyperscalers and those folks that are looking at those kind of drives, but also all the systems people, which have now, we know that probably 70% of the data is still on premise that they're supporting. And so what are the unique things that have to be developed and delivered in terms of this, both the AI environment, which is what we're working on. They showed us a whole lot of data in terms of, I don't have that in front of me right now, but they showed us a whole lot of data in terms of performance and capabilities they're doing. And yeah, there's one way to look at data, which is a 4-block, the FIO testing. But the real work is on the real workloads. And what they find is that when you get into real workloads, which I think is the area that we're going to start working with them on, the testing that has to be done, is that their drives are doing extremely good performance in those environments. So, whether or not we're talking inference training, whether or not inference or training or some of those areas that are in AI. So that's what they're focused on. So look for more coming out from us.
Yeah, you definitely came away buzzing from that day when I met up with you on Tuesday. But before we get to Red Hat Summit, one of the things that I wanted to touch on just briefly, AWS investing $9 billion in Singapore and building out their capabilities there. I'm seeing a trend now. I've written about this 3 or 4 times with Sovereign Cloud, IBM investing in Canada, AWS and Oracle investing in their Japan operations. Big theme I see just kind of arc throughout the cloud space, sovereign clouds. It comes up in pretty much all of the briefings that I'm having, that they're looking to build out this capability. The world's a dynamic place. There's lots going on. I met with, when I was at Red Hat Summit, the person who looks after the IT strategy for the Uruguay government. Red Hat sort of arranged for us to spend an hour with him. fascinating conversation about a 3.5 million population country and how they're thinking through sovereign cloud, how they're thinking through regulations. So just a real big sort of trend line. AWS investing in cloud infrastructure is not big news. But when you join the dots up around this, comes on the back of them investing in Japan back in January. You look at what IBM's done with Canada, you look at what OCI's done also in Japan, really starting to see a trend line around sovereign cloud. And this is because latency is obviously a factor when you're talking about places like Singapore and Japan, but it's also the data's got to be resident within the country.
Well, that's
So,
one of the problem with the latency as well, right? Is the data
yeah,
set by the computers. So.
nobody's fixed the speed of light yet. There's some people working on it apparently, but nobody's made bits go down a piece of fiber quicker. So, I mean, all joking aside, just a big trend line. As I say, not a rock star announcement on its own. I'm going to cover it, and there'll be a research note on it, but a bigger, broader trend that I'm seeing. But let's get to Red Hat. Camberley and I spent some time together this week at Red Hat. Action-packed announcements. We got to spend a whole bunch of time with the CEO, Matt Hicks, and Adesh Badani, who runs their chief product officer. I got to spend some time with Satish Balakrishnan, who runs their Ansible business. Fascinating discussions. But Camberley, what were your key takeaways and thoughts from Red Hat Summit?
A couple things. Matt Hicks started out by making this statement, and I thought it was very curious, and then kind of going, okay, so where is he going with this? And that talking about this explosion that we're having in the AI and everything else, and there's an explosion of options as well. And then he made this statement, said, what's in the center of all this innovation? He said, open source and academia. And I can almost say, yeah, open source is in the middle of this when we're looking at the open AI and all the things that are going with LLMs and sort, and also the fact that most of this is being built on a Kubernetes platform. But why the academia? And he said, the academia are kind of where all these concepts came from, right? In terms of neural networks and the, whether it's IBM research or somebody else's research or any of the labs that we have. So yes, a lot of this AI work, and that is where it's come from. It's like, okay, so that's where this come from. And then he went on to say that, and I really appreciate that AI will not be built by a single vendor. It's not a single monolithic model. You have to be able to run anywhere, and it will be based. And for them, they're saying it will be based on open source. And so what we heard was two big announcements that I came out: RHEL AI, and which is new. OpenShift AI is not new, but the RHEL AI is new. And what is new about that is the ability to run on your PC or your AI PC. We just got one in the lab here, an AI PC. I'm going to run RHEL, I'm going to run AI, and I'm going to be able to do some training. And what did IBM do this week, Steve?
Open source Granite. So, yeah, I mean, that
Go.
was the one that stood out for me. I was chatting to a reporter there, and maybe they'll put some of my comments in their article, but I was chatting to a reporter in the break because Red Hat put the press and analysts in a lot of these sessions for efficiency. And maybe being a former IBM, or maybe being a former IBM who worked on Linux when he was at IBM, I know the context. IBM's been all in on open source since the year 2000. They made an announcement in the year 2000 that Linux would run on all of its server platforms. Now, obviously, that was the mainframe, but it was also Power. It was always also System X at the time. That doesn't sound revolutionary now, 24 years later, but Linux was 6 years old as an operating system at the point when they did that. So being able for what was at the time probably the biggest, certainly one of the biggest server vendors by volume. Obviously, they've sold the System X business off to Lenovo now, but if you wind back 24 years, IBM saying that Linux would run on all of its systems was a big deal. The GM that I used to work for, Ross Maury, used to be the chairman of the Linux Foundation before it was the Linux Foundation. so Open System Development Lab, OSDL. So IBM's got a long track record of open sourcing things. Now, yes, they've got some proprietary platforms as well, but they've done a really good job over the years. So I think this is on message with IBM. It's not surprising to me, and it shouldn't be surprising to anybody else, that IBM deciding to take something that it's developed in house and then open source it is on message for those guys. So I think my personal perspective, for Granite to get adoption, it's got to be on Hugging Face. It's got to be open. It's got to be available as a tool that lots of people can download. So I think kind of they had to do this, but I think it's good that they did. They flashed up some performance benchmarks, not a lot of explanation, something for us to dig into with our labs. I took a picture of it and tweeted it, but I think they looked impressive, but the devil's always in the detail in the 6-point font below a benchmark and needs 400 questions to know whether it was significant. But they were putting up Llama 2 and Llama 3, and I need to go back and look. But I recognized all the names. They blew through it pretty quick. But the performance benchmarks looked impressive. So I think it's a meritocracy on Hugging Face. You put a model out there and you'll know whether it's going to sort of resonate. It's going to be interesting to see that. I think what Red Hat's doing with Granite and building that in is also interesting. So it's going to be fascinating to watch that space play out.
Well, and that brings me to that next big announcement was Instruct Lab. Which I am not a programmer, so I went over there and was like, okay, I don't know YAML code, so I'm not going to be able to do this. But Instruct Lab is, so the premise here is that the ability to contribute to a model has yet to be solved. In other words, how do I, as in open source, I'm always looking at how do I contribute to the projects, right? And so they're looking and saying, how can we do this? And Instruct Lab is that vehicle. Is for people to do some training and then to contribute back into these models. And so, going with their open source kind of concept, saying, how do we make this happen? And all the processes that are around there. I think that, it's a brilliant move. We saw huge. I mean, you couldn't even get near kind of where the labs and the
crazy. The Instruct Lab. Really, busy conference in general, I thought, but Instruct Lab, it was like standing room only. All the Red Hatters doing the demos were just busy the entire time.
So this was, and as they were saying, is when I sat down and talked to some of the folks like Will McGrath, who's on the marketing side, talking about how do you create minimize the barrier to entry for adoption. And in open source, it's very easy. I go to GitHub and I download something I'm running. It's not supported. It may be kind of screwy or whatever, but at least I'm going. And so their vision is, can we do the same thing with the tools? And can we do the same thing with contributing and putting the information back into the LLM? So those are really, really big announcements that were going on there.
And we've got to think, what is it, not next week, the week after. I'm expecting the IBM side of all this to be sort of getting to. So I think as you look ahead a couple of weeks to IBM Think, obviously watsonx is going to get a lion's share of the sort of announcement time. But I think, the open sourcing of Granite, what they're doing with Red Hat has a big presence at Think as well. So it's going to be fascinating.
And the other part of the conference that I really enjoyed, and I guess I didn't appreciate it quite as much last year when she presented, and this is Stephanie Chiris, who's, I know you think should be the next CEO of IBM or something like that.
She's definitely in the, I think she's got to be on the short list. She's just impressive.
Her presence is phenomenal. So,
yeah, she's good.
But when I first heard her talk about ecosystem, it just sounded like partners. But that's part of I think that's part of it because she was just getting her hands talking about other ISVs or hardware people and that kind of stuff. And I think because she was just getting her hands around what this really looks like and where it is, and what was very clear from her presentation is this is a very methodical thought process. of what she's looking at and how she's building out in a very succinct way this overall program, understanding we have hardware vendors, there are ISVs, there are systems integrators, and then there are the regular reseller partners and the distributors. And she's a very holistic look and view of how will Red Hat leverage all of these folks. And
Well,
that they are, and what was really clear is how important they are to the ecosystem and managing it. So the other piece I saw of it, they brought in a whole lot more probably best practices from IBM on partners, marketing, and partner support. So I think that it's a really, if the partners haven't looked at this yet, they really do need to take a hard look at what Red Hat is doing. And given where we're going with all of this, embrace it.
I mean, everything you said plus one. I think the other interesting piece for me is Stephanie's done a great job of growing and making partners more strategic
Mm-hmm.
whilst the ownership of the company has changed. So there could have been a blip with Red Hat changing its ownership to being owned by IBM. That could have put them in conflict with Dell or with HPE or Lenovo, or it could have put them in conflict with other delivery partners and GSIs. Absolutely not the case.
Mm-hmm.
You see that getting better despite the backdrop, and that's what's impressive. I mean, I'm a Stephanie Shiraz fan, been tracking her career for a while. I think she's got to be in the mix for a bigger job, either at Red Hat or in the wider IBM. She's definitely doing a great job of that partner program. So the other one that stood out for me, and you've not covered it, was where the Ansible guys are putting LightSpeed across the entire Red Hat
Yes.
portfolio. It's been that back
Okay,
to
so what is LightSpeed?
LightSpeed's good stuff around all.
Just buy it. Okay,
Just
guys.
buy it. It's good stuff.
Basically a co-pilot, basically, is what.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got time to spend time with Satish Balakrishnan after the Ansible keynote. I think the LightSpeed everywhere is good. The thing for me is the trajectory IBM's and Red Hat are going to be on with the HashiCorp, kind of Terraform and Ansible. I asked some questions, didn't get any answers, but I think if you read between the lines, it's going to be interesting where they take that over time. Obviously, that HashiCorp acquisition has got to close first before they can get into the sort of product management piece. But really fascinating conversation with Satish talking about kind of Ansible as sort of automation as code. Really, really good demo as part of the Ansible keynote, talking about kind of how they're applying AI to the whole sort of Ansible event-driven automation. So I think we're so early and event-driven and automation-driven, with AI. But I saw a trend line. This makes sense. These teams are going to be asked to do more and more. We talked about it off camera, I know, at Camberley during this week, a wave of applications coming. There's going to be hundreds more AI applications. So if you've got an application portfolio of 500, 600 applications today in an enterprise, I don't think that's going to double, but I could see it growing by 50% over the next sort of 18 months as all these AI applications come in. The teams are just barely keeping up as it is. They're going to have to do more in automation just to stand still, let alone move forward. So I think automation as code, kind of what they're doing and fusing that with AI, as I say, LightSpeed going everywhere as a co-pilot, I think it's going to make a lot of sense. So, I mean, we didn't cover Ansible very much, but I mean, it's been a packed
I
week.
actually have one more to cover. Can I go?
Okay, go for it.
We'll go over 30 minutes here. And that was vSphere. It was a major point of topic on the show floor in terms of clients talking what options do we have, or are there options within OpenShift? And as I think, OpenShift from a QVert is not necessary, is not total replacement for vSphere at all. And plus, the conversion is big. But when you ask Matt Hicks again, where are you guys going with this? Because frankly, to their credit, that word, vSphere, VMware, never got said by anybody on stage. So they might talk about virtualization, but in terms of what they were looking and how his answer was, it's very forward thinking. It's saying, we're not going back in time. Where we're going, and what he says is what we're looking at what we did with OpenStack to go forward. We don't want to be that. We don't want to look back. We want to look forward and where we need to take OpenShift capability to be that durable system that can support the full platform, and that there will be different ecosystems. And so, looking at where they're going, I thought it was a very thoughtful, kind, considered answer, given the hullabaloo that's going on right now. So,
Yeah, I'd agree. I thought Matt Hicks impressed me this week. I've got to admit, he's kind of very visionary, very thoughtful about this
he
stuff.
still
So
looks like a kid, though.
looks like a kid who's in his 40s. He looks like he's in his 40s and he looks like a kid. But we digress. I mean, we're running a couple of minutes long, massively busy week. I think we could have done the Krista show this week with everything from RSA. But thank you very much for joining us again. We'll keep doing this. We're up at episode 41. We love doing this show. So please click and subscribe and do all those things to sort of boost the show and share it with your friends. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.